welcome to Benita's Maternity Program webinar. Today we'll be speaking with Sister Ingrid Groenewald, who will be chatting to us about birthing positions. Welcome, Sister Ingrid, and you may take it away.
So yes, thank you very much. I am really happy to be with you again, and welcome to all the new moms and or expectant moms currently and planning their births. So I know in pregnancy you start to think about how birth is going to happen and what you have to do, and just to get your head around all of that. And the birthing positions is such an important thing, and I think sometimes it's undervalued. People don't really think about it so much. But hopefully today, after today, you're going to understand what I mean with that. Okay, so first of all, I wonder how many, I suppose most of you, it's your first baby, and how many of you have actually visited a hospital with specifically the maternity ward and the labor ward. And currently in COVID, obviously, we don't really expect that there will be like tours in the labor ward, but it is still important to think that, if you think about a hospital and the hospital rooms, it's the bed really that takes the focus, and that is really the one thing that I would say you try to avoid in birth, or actually for labor, you try to avoid the bed. You want to be out the bed, okay? And with the birth as well, there are some things that I'm going to just share with you today, so hopefully you're going to understand what I mean with that later today. Okay, so first of all, this is your pelvis. So this is very important to understand our anatomy, how we designed, how birth happens, and we had lots of different talks on the topic, but the pelvis is a really important thing to consider for birthing positions, because it really impacts how easy or how difficult it is going to be for you to actually give birth to your baby. Now, if we think about the pelvis, if you first of all just have a look at the pelvis, you've got a bone on this side, you've got a bone on that side, and then this here is also a bone, and then the spine comes up here. So just if you think about the position of the pelvis, depending on what you do, if you lean forward, something, there's a different angle. If you lean backwards, there's a certain angle. And also for the birth itself, if you lie on your back in labor, and also specifically for birth, if you lie like this, you can actually see this sacrum bone is actually tilted upwards. Okay, so it actually has a little corner there, and it goes a little bit more upwards. So for a mom, if you lie on your back for the birth itself, it makes it really a lot harder, because your baby in effect has to it moves down first, and then it has to go upwards. And sometimes it's really tricky for the baby to go over that hill. So you want to change the position to think, what can you do in your body? How can you change the position that you're in to make birth easier for yourself, as well as for the baby, that the birth actually happens easier. So first of all, just one step back. In labor even, because if we're talking about birthing and birthing positions, birth is the whole process of labor and birth. You're laboring through the contractions up to the point of actually having the baby. And if we think about labor, even here, if you are admitted in hospital, for those of you who are going to have hospital births, you're admitted in hospital, and then most moms actually just climb into the bed. If you go to any hospital at any given time and you go to labor ward, you will see that most moms actually lie in bed, and it's without anybody telling you what to do. You just climb into bed, because the bed is really the focus point of the room, which in effect is, I would today tell you, that is the thing you want to avoid. Because if you lie in bed, let me just get my angle straight. So if you lie on your back, okay, so because we will not be comfortable lying in bed on our backs like this through labor, you're going to be really uncomfortable. So a mom will be on her side. So if you think about this position, if you just change it, if you lie on your side, you've got contractions going downwards, in this direction, to outwards. This is how the uterus goes in that direction. And your weight of the baby actually pushes down to the bed. So this makes it a lot harder, or actually longer. So you are not working, all the forces aren't working together. And by trying to change that, it would be by being more upright, because if you're upright, you've got contractions working downwards, and you've got the weight of the baby also that's pressing downwards. And this mom's labor can really be a lot quicker compared to a mom that is lying in bed. And let's face it, if we're in labor, we want quicker births. You don't want to be in labor for hours and hours and days and who knows how long. You want it as quick as you can possibly can, and you can help yourself if you just remember this tip. Try to avoid the bed. Okay, so if I say try to avoid the bed, what on earth are you supposed to do then? Okay, so you can walk a bit, walk around in the room. If you can go outside, that would be great, or in the passage, but definitely more upright. You can stand, you can kneel, you can lean forward over the bed or the counter. That is a brilliant thing to do. So just by sitting upright is going to work quite well. And you can do some squats. You can sit nicely. You don't have to be on the bed. You can sit on a chair. You can even use the floor to your advantage, or a birth ball. These big exercise balls are great in labor. So all these things are already linked to birth, because what you do here is you helping yourself in the sense that everything basically gets ready for birth. The baby's head and the weight of the baby is pushing down, and it's actually preparing everything also for the birth. And then if you're fully dilated and you have to give birth, now let's see what kind of positions are we thinking about then. Okay, so now if you think about any movie, if you think, what kind of movies you watched recently where there was a pregnant mother and the person who gave birth, it always is very dramatic with someone, like almost passing out, and the mom specifically is in most movies. I would actually say I've never seen a movie where there's a mother who has an upright position. So it's in the subconscious that we are basically, from when we're little, you're actually taught by the things on the screens, on the movies, that this is the actual best position to give birth in, and it's actually not. Okay, so by being in bed, by being on your back is not the ideal position. It's interesting to see that if you look in cultures, if you look at a community that is very I would say secluded, or where there's not a lot of interference from the other world, in the sense with TVs and movies and so on. If you look into those kind of tribes, and specifically they have done some research in South America, and the position that those women birth in are very different. They're all squatting, they're more upright, because it actually makes sense to say, when you are upright and when you are squatting, you're actually helping. It makes it easier for the birth. It's easier for the baby to be born. The weight is pushing down. If you're squatting and you're sitting with your legs like this, you're actually opening the pelvis, so it's easier for the baby to be born. But okay, so now let's face it, we don't live in the bush somewhere. We are in modern times. Most moms go to hospital. Many people still already have home births. Again, that's easier because the midwives are usually quite open to all sorts of different positions. But okay, so if you now have a hospital birth and you're planning a hospital birth and you've got a doctor or a gynae whose the plan is to deliver your baby, how to get around this? What can you do? What kind of positions can you do? And remember, so in the birthing process with the contractions, first of all, being upright, walking around, once you're fully dilated and they want you on the bed, what you could do initially is to actually stand on your knees. Okay, so this is definitely also, I would say, a talk that you would need to have with your gynae. It is important to actually talk about, what is expected and what can you do, because we all know that it's actually easier for you if you are in a different kind of position. So a birth position that works really well, especially with the hospital beds, is by lifting that top part of the bed where the shoulders, the head and shoulders usually is. You can lift that part and you stand on your knees and you turn around and you lean over the top part. So you're actually standing on your knees and leaning over. So you are definitely in a more upright position. So this mom is in, so it's upright but leaning slightly forward. So this, you can see here, this bone, you can see the shape of the bone. If the baby is being born, and it's moving down, the head is moving down, the contractions are moving down, and baby's not keeping on slipping up when a contraction stops. Okay, so that is a really brilliant position for birth. In that position, we have had lots of moms even standing next to the bed. So you can stand, you don't have to actually be on something, you can stand and give birth like that. Okay, so so that is also another position that you might look at. And then also squatting, like I said earlier, squatting is a really good position, but unless you're very fit and you feel like you can really squat for long periods of times, most moms can't do this for extended times. You will definitely have some cramps in your legs. So there are some birth stools that one can use. Otherwise, you can actually use your partner. So if your partner is sitting on a chair with his legs apart, you basically in between the legs, facing outwards and leaning with your arms over the knees of your partner. So your partner is in actual fact supporting you. Okay, so that is, and then obviously you're squatting, so it takes less strain on these muscles on your legs. So that is also a good position. That will obviously be more on the floor than not specifically on the bed, but that is something that one can look at, with the kind of position. So just to come back to explain why I'm saying this, and this is really so important, is that you're making it easier for yourself. If you think about the pelvis, you have contractions in labor that come and go and come and go. Okay, so they become more intense, and then the gaps between the contractions become smaller, so they're more it's not a continuous contraction, but it's like every now and then, the frequency of them. And the same thing happens when you're fully dilated, that you don't have one long contraction. You have a contraction, and then you have a little bit of a break, and then you have a contraction. And when you have a contraction, your body actually takes over and wants to push. And at that time, if you are in an upright position, no matter what if it's leaning over, hanging over something, or if you're squatting, or if you're standing, you've got the contractions that, the uterus is pushing down. That is how the uterus is working. And at the same time, the weight of the baby is pushing down. And that makes for an easier birth because of the angle of this bone. The baby keeps on moving down. And if the contraction stops, the baby stops to move down. Okay, so it's not moving up again. And that is the difference compared to if you think about a mom who is lying on her back and is giving birth. You have a situation that the baby is, if the head is here and the mom is pushing, that you can start seeing the head. And just when the head is about there, the contraction stops, and then you stop to push, and then the baby's head slides back. And then with the next contraction, it's like pushing up again. And then if it stops again, it slides back. And so it keeps moving backwards. And this is what we want to try to avoid, to say, If you are more in an upright position, it helps the baby to stay where the baby is at that time. So it's easier for the next contraction when it starts, that you actually continue the process, that it's not again starting from, 2 steps back. So it's like pushing and, and delivering this baby. So I hope you understand it's really something that is worthwhile exploring, looking at different positions, trying different things out. You can even like stand in your room where you're currently at, stand on your knees, lean over the bed and feel, what does it feel like, if you stand like that, if you've got an exercise ball, if you lean over the ball, or by using your partner and using the legs of your partner, or even just by supporting with his hands, under your arms. How is that comfortable, or what does it work for you? So that when you are in labor, that you can try these different positions out. And remember, there's not just one position. You can always change your mind and see if something is uncomfortable, then you can try get onto your knees, or let's squat a bit, so just to actually help to facilitate with the birth of this baby. So I hope you understand what I mean with the pelvis and the position. So next time, remember, when you go for your general checkup or your pregnancy checkup that happens once a month and later a little bit closer together, remember to bring this topic up. Okay, and ask about the birth position and say, you actually looked at the reason why it's so easy, or not, it's why it's easier for you to give birth in a more upright position, and you'd really like to give it a go. So, and just to see, the response of that, and to really have a discussion regarding that. So I hope it actually equipped you today with something to talk to your doctor or to your midwife about, so that you can, for the birth, also have a really positive, easy birth. Just while we're waiting, I also just want to show you, for the birth itself, it's so interesting, the design of how this works with the pelvis. What I said, that the pelvis is so important, and you've got ligaments in the middle, here, keeping everything together. So if you do different positions, if you squat, for example, you can open up the pelvis, so it's much easier for the baby to go in. That's why when you lie down, you're not using that. Okay, so there are some advantages, different advantages even, that the pelvis can actually open up more. And also, if we look at a baby, at a newborn baby, the skull itself is actually in different pieces of bones together that forms the skull and protects the baby's head. But the design here also is that this front, if you basically feel the baby's head after birth, you're going to feel like lines and frontonelle, soft spots. And the design there really is that in the birth canal, as the baby moves down, the skull, these bones can actually overlap a bit. And once this happens, obviously the diameter of the skull actually becomes smaller. So everything is actually working together to make birth happen. And that is why it's really fascinating, and it's really a miracle to think that this can actually happen with the pelvis. And if you work with your body and you look at different positions, and the baby that also is working with, with the weight of the baby that is pushing down if you're in an upright position, as well as the skull that is doing this to make it easier for the head to be born. So it is definitely something that can happen on a daily basis. So many people give birth right this minute, and by thinking that you can also do this, there's no reason why you can't. Okay, so you are also a woman, you can also birth your baby. So definitely chat to your caregiver about birthing positions. It is a very important topic to discuss.